welcome back. This session, the first part of this session is going to be dedicated to the Postdoctoral Fellowships, okay? And for those of you that aren't necessarily familiar with the territory of Marie Curie actions so far, the Postdoctoral Fellowships are a part of one of the Marie Curie actions which is specifically dedicated to those, what we would call more experienced researchers, but those who already have a PhD, okay, or a doctoral equivalent. This is by far and away, I think it's fair to say, one of the most popular dimensions of the whole of the Horizon Europe programme. As we discovered this morning, the UK has done historically very well from these postdoctoral fellowships that used to be called individual fellowships. And the first part of this session, we're absolutely delighted to be able to welcome the head of unit for the postdoctoral fellowships within the Commission itself. So Fredrik's very kindly agreed to join us, and I'll give him a more formal introduction in a second. Just to say how this will work, so we'll have intervention from Fredrik, and then we will have two case studies from individuals based in the UK with UK institutions who'll present their projects and give you some insider perspective, if I can put it that way, on actually what it's like to apply and be successful in this context. So, without further ado, I'd like to invite to the podium our first speaker. His name is Fredrik Olsson Hector, and he is the head of unit for the Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions for the postdoctoral fellowships in particular. So please join me in welcoming Fredrik to the podium.
Thank you, John, and thank you for inviting me here today. I just realized that it's about 5 years ago since I did a similar live presentation, so I'm quite excited about this and slightly nervous. Yeah. I've been working for Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions much longer than 5 years, though. This way of preparing myself is sort of a giveaway. But I must say I feel very much for the program, because I was once upon a time, I was a mobile researcher myself, facing the issues that we're still trying to address with the program. So it's still very much a relevant program. And the other one? Yes, it was the other one. So I will talk about the postdoctoral fellowship, which, as you see, is, and already knew, is the center of everything. Yeah. I will try to convey a bit more of the mindset you have to put yourself into when you apply for these, what they are about. I will mention some rules, the basic rules, but not go into every detail about this. But I know the UCRO has excellent support. They know all the details about this. So if there's a detail you miss, there's experts to talk about this here in UK as well. So that is not a problem. And of course, you may ask questions afterwards, so that's please. But I just want to give more the spirit of the program here so you understand, because that is important when you start preparing a proposal. Just out of curiosity, how many now in the audience is a researcher sort of potentially thinking of applying for him or herself for a fellowship? Yeah, thank you. And how many of you then represent organizations here in UK that are thinking of possibly hosting researchers? Okay, so about half and half. Good, good. Then, to make it concrete, the call is open, as we've heard. And the deadline is 11th September at 1700 hours, Brussels time. And I will come back, but note there are two important changes this year. One, budget has increased more than 55% compared to last year. So unless number of applications will increase by 55%, the chances for funding we think is considerably higher this year. And the allowances paid have increased significantly also for this year. Yeah. I'll come back to this. Now, so what is the purpose of it all? Well, first and foremost, we are in the excellence pillar, as you heard this morning from Claire. So we're expecting sort of a project with scientific excellence. Yeah. But I will focus on these other sort of things that puts MSCA a bit apart, we think. So, it is a program for the researcher, and where the fellow is at the center, right? And you should ask yourself, if you're applying, you should ask, what will this bring for the researcher when this project is over? That this will sort of be a boost for the fellow, sort of including not only this excellent novel idea concerning the research project itself, but these other things that will help the researcher succeed in the long run. If you don't, you might become an administrator at some point. Yeah. And my mother is still very disappointed at me that I... No. Also important is that this project should also represent at least sort of an inflection point in your career. You should be bold and start something new, develop what you have already acquired previously, and possibly apply it in a new area to think about how to and then involve other possible. We talk about the interdisciplinarity and the intersectoral, involve industries and these other actors that Claire was mentioning this morning, sort of to make the maximum benefit for the society also. You know? Networking. Yeah. Again, think, yes, researcher is the center of this action, but then also look outside this. How can you benefit? I mean, if you can stay in this research and if you succeed, that is also good for the society. Another thing for us that we strive for is this alignment of working conditions. So this is, for instance, now we have increased the allowances to make it more attractive, to make sure that research is something that is recognized by society, that pay good salaries for doing this. Yeah. Diana talked about these other things also, the Green Charter, and it was also mentioned that the Code of Conduct, etc. So there are elements that is form part of it, that research is a proper career, and it is something for anyone to embark on, and hopefully you will be able to stay there and continue to produce important result. When you apply, it is also important to point out the advantages for the hosting organization. Because for them, it should bring attractiveness, visibility, and reputation. All this leading to a stronger research and innovation capacity of the organization. Now, there are two kinds of postdoctoral fellowship. We have the European, here on the left, and the global fellowship. So if you start with the European fellowship, it's 1 to 2 years, and that is then with the host. You go to somewhere, then in the case of you are now in UK, you move country to go somewhere else in Europe to do a 1 to 2 year fellowship with the European host. Nationality is a non-issue. You can come from UK, you can come from anywhere in the world and apply for a fellowship in Europe. Yeah. The crucial thing here is that you move country. Yeah. The other type is what we call the global fellowship, where you will apply with a European host, but where the big part of the project will be done outside Europe. And this what we call the outgoing phase with a non-European partner is for 1 to 2 years, and then you have a mandatory return phase to the European host, where the European host is the host having the grant and sort of having the overall responsibility for the project. But the idea is that you will go somewhere in the world and then develop your ideas, your projects, your innovations, and then you will come back to Europe and then transfer those skills and knowledge also to the European host. Yeah. For the global fellowship, it is for, you should have a European nationality or be what is called long-term residents of Europe. So if you've lived in Europe for 5 years, then you're considered sort of European in this regard. Now the other criteria are listed here. So you should have a PhD to apply. As I said, European fellowship, any nationality goes, so nationality is a non-issue. For the global fellowship, you should be able to be considered yourself as a long-term resident, at least, if you don't have a European passport. And when I say European, that is EU member state or a country associated to the framework program. That is more or less the geographical Europe. There is a limit on how much research experience you can have. So after you have obtained your PhD, the maximum is 8 years of research experience. Now this research experience is counted as sort of the full-time equivalent. So if there were breaks for whatever reason, then you can deduct those years. This is not 8 calendar years, but your experience, and you can, if you sort of did research but was also working teaching half-time, then you can deduct this, and it's all in the application form, sort of, yeah. That at the end you have to make sure that what it adds up to is at maximum 8 years of research, full-time research experience. And then last, but the rule that has been a constant throughout all these years is the mobility rule. So you have to be mobile to get this funding like any other MSCA funding, meaning that you should move country to get this. And how we measure this is that the country you're going to, you can have spent maximum 12 months in that country during the 3 years prior to the call deadline. So prior to September 11th, if you were to apply to go to Germany, you could have spent maximum 12 years in Germany since 11th of September 2021. Yeah. trying to move forward.
Can you try again?
Yes. So European fellowship, as I said, 1 to 2 years. Global fellowships, outgoing phase, so the international partner, 1 to 2 years, and then the mandatory phase back in Europe for 1 year. So that then becomes a 24 to 36 months project. To reinforce this possibility to interact with other organizations, other sectors, we very much encourage secondments during the project. To go to another project partner that is relevant for your project, to work there for extended periods of time. And also to reinforce this even more, there's something what we called non-academic placement that you can add to the end of the project. So that after the 2 years or after the 3 years, you can apply for a non-academic placement, and that will then increase the funding to fund you for another 6 months to then go there to hopefully develop more or apply or sort of reap the benefits of the previous work that you have done. Some very quick details on the funding. So the living allowance is now close to 6,000 euros per month. This is a gross amount, meaning that the hosting organization will have deductions for social security, etc. So the amount that you will see, the minimum amount required from our side is then obviously less than this. Then you will also get a mobility allowance because you have been taking the hassle of moving country to do this project, 710 euros. And if you have family or family obligations, then you can get an additional 660 euro per month. And then on the right side, you see the contribution to help support the project that will be then managed by the host organization for research costs and general management and overhead. Yeah. So this isn't, the living allowance has gone up by 18% compared to the previous last year. Another important little detail is that the country coefficients, because the living allowance is multiplied by a country coefficient depending on the cost of living. So in UK, that country coefficient has been slightly increased compared to last year. I think it was 1.345 something. That has gone up to 1.4 something, so 4% increase for UK. Yeah. We have had problems in the past with fellowships in the United States. People many going to the Silicon Valley or to New York, East Coast, where the cost of living has been much higher than this sort of United States average that was applied. So, for instance, United States coefficient was increased by 65%. So that will bring big help for those fellows. Otherwise, the country coefficients are slightly modified. I would say mostly what has happened is that many Eastern European countries where the cost of living was lower before, they have caught up, so they are now sort of closer to 1. Yeah. Again, there's a lot of guidance documents. As I said in the beginning, I would recommend that you read not maybe the entire work program, it's a document of 200 pages, but find the 2 pages of postdoctoral fellowships. So reading there to see sort of the policy ideas again, because all the other guidance documents we have, they are in principle just extrapolations from what's written there. So if you have that summary is there, you know the intention of the policymakers to then better frame your project. Yeah. I don't know how we're doing on time here, but yes. Very quickly on UK participation, just basic statistics. In Horizon Europe, we've been through these difficult years. But UK nationals, they were always eligible to apply, since anyone from the entire world is welcome. So here you can see that they have been applying, you have been applying from UK consistently through these first 3 years, around 250 applications, and you have been, as you will show, even more successful than the average, so leading to around 50 grants for UK nationals in the first 3 calls. And here you can see the success rate. The UK nationals, the green line, is a significant step above the average. So your predecessors have done something correct from the UK. So these numbers should not discourage you from applying. Yeah. Then there's been also still number of UK hosts also applying. In the end, they were not funded by us, but the ones that we evaluated and put on the main list could then be funded, and thanks to the guarantee fund. And here you can see that also UK hosts have been doing fine these 3 years, being funded and via the guarantee fund mechanism. Yeah. So now we expect that this number will further increase when there's this no uncertainty anymore about where UK stand vis-à-vis the research framework program. Just one slide here on the type of scientific areas. Sorry for the small, but if the top block there is human science, social science, and humanities. You see on the left is UK nationals, the areas they apply to. In the middle, the grants awarded to UK hosts via the guarantee fund mechanism, and the average on the left side. So this shows, you can see the relatively strength of UK hosts, and where UK national and so social sciences, you have a bigger part of the researchers from UK going out than staying. But if you take information science and engineering, very strong in UK compared to the average, also reflected in relatively few UK nationals going out of UK to in that area. I'm still here for questions afterwards, and I will be around to the very end of today, so don't hesitate to ask me more specific questions about the program, and by all means, please apply.
Thank you so much, Fredrik. Thank you for that. And I think we have a world's first, a commission representative telling people not to read the work program. But what we would recommend, if you're particularly interested in the postdoctoral fellowships, read the guide for applicants. Always make sure you have that next to you. And also just a little bit of a shameless plug before we move on to the case studies. So we've mentioned it before, but UCRO as an office, we have these in-depth information sessions that we have for each of the particular calls. So the postdoctoral fellowships call, we have a session. We delivered that, or Anne, my colleague, delivered that a couple of months ago. The recording and the slides are available online, okay? So even though we may run out of time for questions later on or at the end of this session, you can review that content and email the national contact point for anything specific. So thanks very much, Fredrik. It's my pleasure now to welcome up to the podium Dr. Magdalini Theodoridou. And I hope that's... Oh, no, it's not Magdalini?
It's changed
It's Jason. Sorry about that. So it's not Magdalini at all. It's Jason Stafford from the University of Birmingham. So Dr. Stafford, and I'm going to enjoy reading out Jason's biography. He is an associate professor at the School of Mechanical Engineering at Birmingham, and his research fields span thermofluids, multi-phase flows, and the mechanochemical processing of two-dimensional nanomaterials. Is that right, Jason? Have I got that right?
Perfect.
Okay, I have no idea what any of that means. But Jason does, and he's a successful Marie Curie Postdoctoral Fellow who's going to share his insights of both the application process and his experiences of being successful in that regard. So please welcome to the stage, I believe, Jason Stafford. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, so hello everyone. Yeah, so I'm going to give you, I guess, a quick run through of my brief personal experience of having a Marie Curie Fellowship. And I know everyone's got different types of backgrounds and different areas that they're going to be applying to, like we've seen the chart in the last speaker's presentation as well. But hopefully you can take something general from this that could be useful. I think that would be great if that's possible. So to give you a sense, and I know, Fredrik, you mentioned about an inflection point, and it's exactly what's happened to my career is what the Marie Curie Fellowship has done. So I had a before Marie Curie Fellowship, which was working in industry in a research lab, and an after Marie Curie Fellowship where I transitioned into academia. So I've kind of gone the other way, where a lot of academics now are going the opposite direction to that, right? You might start in academia, go to industry. I went the other way around. I have kind of I would say myself, a very balanced view of industry and academia. So I don't see one better than the other or one more advantageous than the other. They've both got their strengths, they've both got their weaknesses. And so I spent roughly half of my career in industry, about 5 years post-PhD, working for a company called Alcatel-Lucent and Nokia, who took over Alcatel-Lucent, and they ran this research organization which is called Bell Labs. So if you're a physicist or a chemist, you might have heard of them before. I did my PhD in Ireland in the University of Limerick, and then my Marie Curie allowed me to transition to Imperial College London for 2 years. And since then, I took up an academic position in the University of Birmingham here in the UK. So what did I do? So I guess to give you an idea of why I applied for a Marie Curie Fellowship and why it was, let's say, so well aligned for me personally and what I wanted to do, I kind of have to give you an idea of what I did do beforehand. So I'm a fluid dynamicist, so I like flows of liquids, gases, these types of things, studying those things and using them to cool things down. That's what I did beforehand. So within Bell Labs and Alcatel-Lucent, they create telecommunications devices. These are electronic components that heat up when they operate, and you have to cool those down to keep them reliable. And there's a lot of energy goes into cooling things. So data centers, for example, and a lot of this transition to AI requires a lot of energy because roughly 50% of the energy goes into cooling. So we were working on a lot of fundamental topics on that, but very much connected to application as well. We were driven by products that we had to input to our research. Arguably the most famous, I guess, invention from Bell Labs is the transistor. So everyone has been impacted in some way by that as well. So why make a career move? So it seemed like quite a good research position, and it was. I really enjoyed it. But then I had an idea that I wanted to work on, and that didn't really align with what the company was doing. And that's exactly why I chose then to go down the route of a Marie Curie Fellowship. So around the mid-2010s, there was this emerging field that was coming up, which was atomically thin materials. So these are two-dimensional materials. The most well-known one, which people probably heard of the most hype about, is graphene, so a single layer of carbon atoms. But there are thousands of these. And they can be used for various different things, so transistors, memory devices, environmental remediation, supercapacitors, and batteries. So lots of different applications. But one of the big challenges that I kind of started to see in the literature around these is that not many of the devices that were being made in the lab were being transitioned into real life. It's kind of still like that a little bit, but we're working on that. And the reason for that is because large-scale, high-quality production of these materials was lacking. So there wasn't really very many sustainable routes to scale them up. And so that's the idea I wanted to work on. I wanted to kind of solve this problem, or at least contribute towards solving this problem of scale-up and synthesis of these 2D materials. So very, very different to what I just showed you about what I did in industry. I was working on cooling solutions for electronics. But there was one connection to that. One was fluid mechanics. So I wanted to do this synthesis mechanically, essentially. So you take a precursor material, like graphite here on the left. So think of it like a deck of cards. You apply a mechanical force to that deck of cards, and you split out the layers, and those are your layers of graphene. So you can do it mechanically. And that's very sustainable because you're not using toxic chemicals. So that was my my sales pitch. Also, coupled to that then was that I had to couple an area which I wasn't very familiar with, so engineering nanomaterials. I'd never worked in them before. So that's the area I wanted to study then, was this interaction between what I knew and what I wanted to know, and gain these new insights to create sustainable processes. So that's what I wanted to do. But of course, what I wanted to do wasn't what I could do. And the problem with that, of course, then is how do you find out what you could do by training and so forth like this? And so the first thing I looked at was within the company. So it's a very multidisciplinary company, but in the end of the day, it makes telecommunications products. It's not scaling up materials to produce them on a large scale. That's just not their business. So I knew I had to move somewhere. I looked at other industries, but the industry hadn't been evolved at that stage. It was still very, very early stage. So everything was still very much in academia. So I knew then I had to go from industry into academia. I knew I had to go from my fluid mechanics and thermal fluid mechanics into something more materials related and chemical engineering around scale up. And I looked within Ireland where I was living. Okay, the ideal solution was you kind of stay where you are, but actually in retrospect, you gain a lot from mobility to different countries that you only learn afterwards actually as well. So I looked close next door, which is the UK here, and lots of very, very good departments and schools that do materials engineering and chemical engineering, and have lots of great facilities when it comes to like microscopes and so forth like that. So it ticked those boxes for me when I thought about what should I do, so I decided to apply for Marie Curie Fellowship. But the one most important thing out of all that actually wasn't necessarily on all that mobility part. It was on the family circumstances too. And I don't know whether maybe some of you have similar situations, but I was married at the time and we were also expecting a child. So the one that sold it for me was actually, no, it accounts for this. It accounts for family allowances. If it hadn't accounted for family allowances, I would definitely not be doing what I'm doing now and not doing that project that I really wanted to do. So that's, I think, a big distinguishing factor between lots of other national fellowships and the Marie Curie. And even hearing it now, there's even more financial incentive there than when I was doing it in 2017 to support you there. So it's a really attractive program. And I think the fact that it's raised by 55% this year is a really great opportunity for you guys to apply, and hopefully the success rates will be a lot better. Okay, so I have a snippet here from my proposal, which is around career development. And I pitched this as shared development plan, not a career development plan for myself. Of course, you're at the center of your Marie Curie Fellowship. The training is for you, everything like that. But I felt that if you have kind of a unique background, and in my case, I had what I felt like a unique background. I was coming from industry back into academia. Then there is something about you that's different that you want to highlight in your proposal. So I pitched this as being shared development. At the time, the UK were in the EU. So Imperial College were part of the EU as well, of course. And then the benefits that I would give them was going to be important too. So if you can identify things that you do that your host isn't really doing or can't do that well, expertise that you have, I think that's, for me, what I felt helped me when I came to writing the proposal. So I identified around the scientific skills, transferable skills, and the technical area, and identifying both the gaps for you personally, but the gaps for the host as well, that you were going to enhance their capabilities. The final thing that I want to mention is, what's happened since then and how much of an impact it's had on my research and my career. So at the end of my fellowship, I got an academic position in University of Birmingham, where I am now. Another highlight was I got invited to attend the MSCA Presidency Conference in Romania, which was really, really good because you really notice that there's a community around Marie Curie Fellowships. The MCA, for example, and other likes of the UK are really providing lots of support around that to individuals. And you get to feed in. So in that conference, I got to feed in what I felt could be changed, and the EC members were there and everything like that. So they listened to that, which is really, really good. There are many other different points then along my timeline up to now, which were highlights. But highlights are great. But on top of that, there's tons of failures. And it might be a case that you fail at this as well. But that's okay. About 5 times the successes I have as failures. And it's difficult right at the start, but you learn quite a lot from the application process itself. You learn to reflect on your own career, what you're missing, and you learn then to what are the things you need to build onto that. And you will eventually reach that goal. It might not be direct through a certain fellowship or a project or whatever, but you can get there indirectly around a more tortuous path once you have that wish. The biggest outcome, I think, for me, the success, is that now I have a group which is 2 and going to be 3 postdocs and 6 PhD students who are all learning about this topic of combined fluid mechanics and engineered nanomaterials. So a topic that I started off in my fellowship, these are all people that are being trained in that as a whole. And we're trying to address some of really important global challenges around manufacturing, clean air, clean water, and thermal energy challenges as well. The last thing is, I can't get away from it. So the Marie Curie Fellowship, we had some really good outputs from it. Two patents we had from my Marie Curie Fellowship, and we've just started to spin out to commercialize the research from that. That's just this year with my hosts. So Omar Matter and Camille Petit were my hosts when I started in 2017. And we've also added on a postdoc who's become our CEO to spin out this company and hopefully scale up this technology. So it continues to give, and I think once you kind of keep that in mind about where you want to go and what you want to do with it, the process of applying, etc., is a really valuable one. The last thing I mentioned, I guess, in the summary is, it's great. It gives you time to think. It gives you independence, technical speciality. I think look at your career development. So what are you missing? What are the skills you need? Like I mentioned, I targeted this as a shared development plan, what you will bring to the host. I think it's very important that you speak to your host. So these are people, in my case, I've spent 7 years with them now, indirectly, 2 years for my Marie Curie, but we collaborate for the last 5 years as well. So there are people that you kind of want to have, good alignment with what your characteristics are and them. You don't have to have the same skills. Actually, it's the opposite. You want to have different skills, but you want to be well aligned on what your targets are. So speak to them, because not all mentors are going to be the same, and not all mentors will have your interests at their own heart as well, okay? Long-term career, so I used the fellowship because I had no teaching experience. I took on a course in Imperial College in Fluid Mechanics because I wasn't sure if I wanted to stay in academia. And I think that's really important because, if you try something and you say, okay, actually I don't like that, then that can dictate where you go afterwards. Because if you think about academia, it's 40% research, 40% teaching, 20% admin. It's very different than your fellowship. It's very different than your PhD. So it's worth exploring that either directly, like I did in my case, where I took on teaching, or indirectly, where you speak to people about what it's like to do that as well. And the last thing is writing a proposal, whether you're successful or not, is a valuable thing because, like I mentioned, you can reflect on your own career and you can develop what you want to do in the future in any case. And that's it. So we're here for the next 20 minutes, so if you want to ask any questions.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much, Jason. That's really fascinating insight into the processes, the wider context, the point about career development, and also the additional support that these opportunities, the postdoctoral fellowships, can give if you have a family circumstance and considering your arrangements in that regard and moving around Europe as well. Going to move us swiftly on. It is, I hope, looking to colleagues, now time for Magdalini. So Dr. Magdalini Theodoridou, sorry, Magdalena is a doctor at the Newcastle University. My notes tell me that she is something called a Fellow of Newcastle University's Academic Tract, NEWACT, if that is correct, and that's the engineering hub for biotechnology at the University of Newcastle, as I mentioned. So, Magdalini, without further ado, I'd welcome you to the podium for your perspectives, and everyone, if we could welcome Magdalini, thank you.
Thank you very much for the invitation to share my experience. Thanks, John, for the introduction. So the short version of my name is Magda, if that's easier for everyone. I thought of just saying a little bit more about how it all started. I graduated in civil engineering in my home country, in Greece, and then right after that, I was selected as an early stage researcher by one of the Marie Curie, now called doctoral networks. Back in time, it had a different name, Initial Training Networks, I believe. And that was because I had already developed during my university years in Greece an interest in heritage structures, and that call was specifically for the first European PhD in science for conservation, because it was like the first time they tried to establish that interdisciplinary degree. I'm not going to focus on that, but I think you can understand a little bit the impact of that on my career. Since then, I've been mobile. Basically, I never stayed in the same country for very long. Maybe the UK will be the one. I went to Cyprus, the University of Cyprus, as a postdoctoral fellow. I think it probably helps to share that I found that post before finishing my PhD. So I think if we're talking about brand names, I think it really worked in my case. It's a very prestigious scheme, and I stayed there for a while, working for submitting different proposals, national, European level, and doing research mainly, but also teaching. By then, I had already developed an expertise in bridging traditional and modern technologies for sustainable conservation and new construction, and I could divide it into two topics, let's say, the design and development of novel construction materials, both for contemporary and historic architecture, and the innovative application of non- or micro-destructive techniques for the characterization of building materials. So I was following, let's say, the conventional medical approach for buildings, diagnosis, development and application of the appropriate treatment, and then monitoring of their health. But yet I felt that there could be something better there, and I thought of our case, like our... I did.
I think you might have pressed on the...
Oh, yeah, okay. Good. So we are here. And so, yeah, I was saying that I thought of our system, basically, our immune system. What would be if we could develop materials and structures that could heal themselves. And that's where this idea came, basically, to submit a Maurice Sklodowska-Curie individual fellow, named back in time the equivalent of postdoctoral fellowships today. And the host institution in my proposal was Cardiff University. That idea brought a new aspect and a new discipline in my experience, the self-healing geological construction materials and structures. And there was another opportunity, which I will mention later as well. I think... Sorry, I'm getting confused with changing the slides. It was not only joining the Cardiff University as a fellow, but also the fact that these fellowships can offer integration into established networks as well. And in that case, there was in parallel a successful application for a UKRI-funded project of including about 50 researchers, 4 universities, and industrial partners, the Resilient Materials for Life. It was about self-healing, but focusing on cement materials, so I brought the expertise of working with cementless materials and heritage structures. So key points about the fellowship, it's all about advanced training, skill acquisition through advanced training, international and intersectoral mobility. It offers, I think, one of the most important selling points is the tailored, that you can tailor your career development plan to match the career needs, and exploiting opportunities not only at the host institution, but also the other accessible networks that offers new opportunities for collaboration. Training included, in my case, like specific fields like microbiology, biomineralization, things that I had no idea before, and I couldn't really. At the beginning, I was very I didn't know how to perform the experiments. Self-healing also, like new field, no previous experience, but also included transferable skills and soft skills, which are very important for career development. And in that case, I could mention leadership, communication skills, project management, mentoring, grant writing sessions, but also entrepreneurship, team leading, open access, publication, teaching, supervision, lecturing, etc., which are very, very critical for the following step if someone wants to stay, especially in academia. In my case, I also added a secondment, focusing on the skills acquisition again. I tried to exploit also any opportunity for intersectoral collaboration and engage outside the academic world and also include social responsibility activities. And some examples are my secondment, like to be more specific, my secondment was in Italy. It was structured in a way that I went at the beginning of my fellowship to learn something from them. They had no experience in self-healing, but they had used biomineralization in heritage buildings before. So that was at the University of Florence and the National Research Council in Florence. And then some of my intersectoral collaborations include this project in London. Costain was one of the partners of the RM4L project. So we could visit the sites, and also I collaborated with a government office for the protection of cultural heritage in Wales. Visibility and engagement. Just a few examples. I was invited to represent the excellence pillar in the presentation of the new vision for research and innovation in Wales while I was a fellow. I think I was very honored to receive that invitation. There are other things that I try to do as well, like storytelling trainings and joining the European Researchers' Night, but also Cardiff University helped with a press release that really attracted a lot of interest from the media. So I was continuously receiving invitations to provide information about publications outside the academic world. I need to... No, it doesn't change. I think I will keep going because it's just photos. I couldn't forget mentioning the opportunity to join the Marie Curie Alumni Association as a current fellow or alumni, obviously. It is one of the biggest researchers association, counting over 20,000 members. Great opportunities for networking, career development, connections, like probably more opportunities to provide feedback back to the European to the unit in the European Commission. I was more active. I've been more active in the Gender Equity, Diversity and Inclusion Working Group because I was the chair for. I've been the chair for some time. But you will listen more. You will hear more about that in the next session, as I've seen in the program. Next slide, please. Also, just to quickly mention that this is not only a one-way transfer, it's a two-way transfer of knowledge. So you're also bringing skills as a fellow to the host. It can be specifics, it can be specific skills, technical skills, contacts, network, but also expanded knowledge. And in that case, for example, I could mention that I had experience in European funding, which was very important for the host institution and my collaborators there. Career after the fellowship, just to quickly mention, I found this job again before the end of my fellowship. I was very lucky, but it was very critical. I wouldn't have found that job without the experience that I gained through the Marie Curie Fellowship, because it was very specific to the topic, biotechnology in the built environment, and it was the New York Fellowship. It's a quite prestigious scheme. The cost of it is like a 10% success rate. If you include overheads, it reaches 900K as a funding, so it's quite important. Also, I joined the Hub for Biotechnology in the Built Environment, which was a Research England funding and a very interdisciplinary network of researchers, including people from design and biotechnology, which again was outside my engineering world. The School of Engineering, of course, in Newcastle University, and some other opportunities that I have gained after this experience. But I think the most challenging project, and I really believe that my mobility and resilient skills and adaptation have helped me a lot, is the birth of my twin daughters, the most challenging project of my life. That's the first International Women in Engineering Day after their birth. That was the post on Twitter. And would I participate again? Absolutely. I couldn't recommend it enough, and we are considering now applications for MSCA network from Newcastle University. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Efaisto, Magda. I wonder what's harder, raising twins or trying to get this clicker to work, which is the bane of everyone's existence. Guys, don't be perturbed if you see others filtering through from the Doctoral Network's call session next door. They're due to join us for the next plenary session, but we do still have time, 5 to 10 minutes, for any questions, for any of the panel. We don't, or who knows if we do, but I can't see a roaming mic. So in the next 10 minutes or so, please do, Ben's on hand. Introduce yourself, say where you're from. Keep the questions, if you can, at the more generic level. If you have specific project questions, you can always message the NCP afterwards. Thank you so much, sir.
Hi, everyone. Hello? Yes, working. Thank you very much. Very interesting. I'm Edwards. I'm from University of West London. Hopefully finishing my PhD soon. So I'm very much looking into what's next. I think my question was around the fields that I think it's difficult to define are mostly supported, but I myself come from the field of music. So I wondered, where does the creative field stand? I mean, I don't need numbers like percentage-wise. Are they better or worse than... I know you mentioned humanities, but humanities is quite a large field. Maybe you have some tips for creative fields. Is it to make it more interdisciplinary, or how does one goes from that kind of field to apply for this? Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes perfect sense. Thank you. I wonder, Fredrik, if you wanted to just say a few words about arts and humanities in general sense, obviously, rather than going into the specifics on music, but the general attractiveness, if you like, to those in those areas. Because, as you all know, the program is open to all, and it's worth noting, just before I come to Fredrik, that from a UK's perspective, both Marie Curie and ERC is particularly fertile ground for those engaged in arts and humanities and SSH. Sorry, Fredrik, stalling a bit of a thunder.
I mean, you should not worry about the field, or how do I classify these? We have a certain class. We put them, or you ask when you apply actually to choose one of 8 panels or 8 fields, and that's a very crude way. So the social or the humanities is big because that is just basically the rest that goes in there. It will not affect the evaluations because experts, they do not have any of those fields stand to them. We search for the relevant expert for the proposal at hand. So this is just something to organize our work a bit, and also that if we were to evaluate because money is allocated to these panels in proportion to the number of proposals received. So the success rate is exactly the same in mathematics, which was a very small panel, as in humanities and social sciences. It's the same success rate. And we will find the appropriate expert. But given that the money is pre-allocated, we also stop some sort of if it were to exist sort of competition between
physics is more important than chemistry, so we have to give this good score, you know, to avoid anything that. So you apply, and I mean, it's your peers that will evaluate the proposals. So you know your field and you present it for your that's within your field.
That's great. Sorry, Fredrik, just check if your microphone is on or not. Yeah.
Now?
That
Is
was
better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably should have checked that before. Thank you so much. I don't know if the other panel and the members of the panel wish to intervene, say anything about the world of arts and humanities at all, and its relevance or not.
Yeah. Well, sorry.
No.
I guess to give you an example from our university, so there were some research projects went on about how to communicate air quality to the public. And one of the routes that they took was to use sound and use music. So your proximity to highly polluted zones in the city, play different music and things like that. So I mean, it's becoming very topical, I think, within multidisciplinary research, especially when you're dealing with policy change and communicating results, maybe that are in physical or chemical sciences, to non-specialists in those areas. It can be quite a powerful tool. So yeah, that's all.
That's really helpful. Thank you. I think we might take another question if there is one at all. From anybody? The gentleman here, yep, thank you.
Hi, thank you very much. Fraser from the University of Warwick. For the two researchers, Jason and Magdalini, how did you find your host institute and host researcher? Have you got any advice for potential applicants for that process, please?
Do I go first?
You can go.
Go ahead.
Sorry, was the question if we liked it or not, or how did we choose the?
How did you find your host institution and the supervisor or PI that you worked with?
Okay, so in my case, it was I was interested. I developed an interest in that application. I mean, the development of self-healing. It was like very new. It's still a very new topic, in construction. And I approached the team there. There was an open position at that time, but we decided to go for the Marie Curie application. I think I was very lucky with Cardiff University. I mean, I'm also lucky at Newcastle University, but from a different perspective. They had a very and also my supervisor, they were very involved with, helping with a career development plan and training opportunities, etc., which is very critical for this type of fellowship. So it's not only the excellence in terms of very specific research field. I would recommend looking into the career development opportunities offered by the host institution. Not equally, but almost equally.
That's great. Thank you, Magda. Jason.
Yeah, so I guess I started bottom up in the sense that I looked at essentially your career development plan, what I was missing, and what I needed. And then I started to look at academic papers to see who are specialists in that field and identified people from that. And then I contacted them, and actually I prepared a presentation of my idea before I had even written the proposal, just to kind of gauge what type of questions they might ask to gauge their interest as well. Because like I mentioned, I think it's important that they buy into your idea, not necessarily take over, that's the last thing you want, but you want them to buy in to help you along. So I used that presentation and that call to assess that myself and realize that they were a good host or mentor to approach. And then we wrote the proposal. And then afterwards, when I found out it was successful, I also went over to meet them before even starting as well, just to again get everything up and running before you even start, let's say. So that was my approach.
Fantastic. What I'm going to do is just take one final question, please. Yes. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Amy here at UCL. I'm a new academic and I'd like to attract people to come and apply for these fellowships. I'm presently part of a collaboration that I'm in physics. I work with hundreds of people based in the US, Europe, all over the world. Now, it strikes me that both of your case studies were sort of interdisciplinary, sort of commercializable, new kind of things. Of course, there's a lot of benefit for us to have this cross-pollination and people coming over with new skills, but it's sort of still the same field. So I'm kind of wondering if there's ways of pitching sort of fundamental science in a way that's attractive for this scheme.
Okay, great. Thanks for the question. I might take each speaker in turn, and then we will wrap up. Thanks, Nino. Fredrik, so multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary versus fundamental research. Is it true to say there's an emphasis on the former? For me, no, but...
True. What did you say that?
So the question was around
Yeah,
balance of
yes.
fundamental versus interdisciplinary. When it comes to evaluation of the projects, where to pitch that and position that?
I mean, as I said, I mean, the interdisciplinary, that is something positive. But if you sort of imply that would come at the cost of excellence, well, I mean, then it's, yeah. So that's no good either. But so, I mean, in practice, we don't see any competition between that we have expert evaluators coming to us. How should I, if it's truly excellent, but not necessarily new sort of interdisciplinary, that is still, I mean, I wouldn't worry about this question. I mean, interdisciplinary and this intersectoriality, so that is something positive. So if that fits and you can make it, then it works. Experts also very quickly see if this is something artificial, sort of add on to make me as an expert happy with this proposal. I mean, that doesn't work either. So if it makes sense and you think about this, then yes.
That's great. Thank you so much. Sorry to rush us through. Just very briefly, guys, did you have any sort of reflections just on the interdisciplinary fundamental research point? Everyone next door is primed, waiting for us to wrap up. So in brief, if you could, that'd be great. Magda.
Yeah, I mean, I think through the MCA, I've met a lot of other fellows. I don't see that as an obstacle. I think, as long as there is a two-way transfer of knowledge, as I mentioned, I think it's that's what you do. That's your research. If you give something to the fellow and the fellow brings something to the host institution, I think it's a very good deal, let's say.
That's great, thank you. And final word to you, Jason, go ahead.
So I'll try to be as quick as I can, John. So I think I picked out two questions there. Right? There's the interdisciplinary side of things and fundamental versus applied. And I think that kind of answer around, I don't think it really matters. I think it reflects what the candidate is like as well. So in my case, I had a commercial background, which meant I brought that out. The second one then, I guess, is around, you're trying to attract people to UCL, is that correct? You're trying to attract...
Yeah, and these are people
candidates.
I already have connections with, right?
Right. So, I mean, you have an advantage in some ways that you have the London effect with candidates, that people do want to come to London unis, and especially UCL as well, which is a top uni. And I know this kind of sounds maybe superficial, but it's probably worth highlighting the fact that the salary and et cetera is so good, because often the practical problems people have when they make these decisions are, can I afford to live in London? And with something like this, I think you can, whereas with a normal postdoc, it's less likely so.
That's great. I'm so sorry, guys. We're going to have to leave it at that because everyone's hoping to come through. But very quickly, please join me in a massive thank you to the panel members for the session. Thank you.